Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/slash Tales from Tech Support. In today's episode, General Protection Failure, who you gonna calm? Who made this system? Hardware swap. With users like this. I wonder what this button does. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. General Protection Failure, who you gonna calm? Another Windows 98 GPF. Reboot, hope the fabrication wasn't at a critical point, start back up again. I sighed. Windows 98 SE had gone out of support in 2003 or so, and here I am, in 2018, staring at a GPF on a 1280x1024 LCD, itself 20-inch or more, with pixels like Lego, embedded in a 16-ton fabrication machine with a factory built around it. The machine used to be used for highly precise structural steel forming, now it's used for training and demonstration. The original supplier went bust, Siemens bought up the smoldering remains. This old piece of crap was EOLED. Except, mechanically, it's a perfectly good steel fabrication system. They log a ticket with Central IT to ask if anyone could see if this old system could be brought back. I'm passing through the city, so my director asks me to check in, and if we need to, tell them to shut up and put their hands in their pockets. The metal fabrication people give me a tour of the factory, saying we're the only part of the company which is actually a manufacturing business, we do PLM, the works. I knew this, as I was the IT contact for their PLM software, Teamcenter, if anyone's heard of it, but it was nice to see what they got up to on the ground. We arrived at the fabrication machine, partly embedded in the building structure. When we expanded the factory, we had to leave this in place as it's actually structural, said one of the overalls, as though it was some ticket of pride. I got under the control panel of the machine, which looked extremely industrial, but was really just a keyboard, a trackball, and a monitor. For however cool it looked, it was a 15-pin VGA D-sub, PS/2 keyboard and PS/2 mouse connectors. The controlling machine was screwed to a motherboard tray, and seemed to be a fairly standard late 1990s PC. The socket 5 or socket 7, didn't check, CPU was under a massive, by the day's standard, all-copper heatsink and running entirely passively. 3 decades of humidity had put a lovely verdigrease on the copper. Hey, what's this ISA card? I called out to nobody in particular. That's the industrial controller board. Key to the kingdom. Work out what that does, and we're laughing. So I uncoupled it and pulled it. Back where breathing didn't need filters and the words corrosion and computer didn't appear in the same sentence, I'm investigating the ISA card, and I've got a young lad pulling an old desktop from stores which the site field engineer tells me has an ISA port. In the unlucky Dell dimension, Windows XP shows us an ISA card, but it's not recognized, no driver. EISA PNP did use proper device IDs and, looking up the ID, showed it as a completely unregistered ID, ergo, it was proprietary and faking the PNP standard. The ISA card itself had your usual 74 LS245 octal bus transceivers, used to buffer the ISA bus, and a larger socketed DIP28 with a sticker on it. When investigating these weird cards, you need to always bear in mind that some industrial equipment manufacturer is not going to design its own interface chip. What interested me was a DIP40, pin through hole, everything else was socketed, which routed some lines to a pair of MC145406PS, very common RS-232 transceivers, which then went to the rear port. We had 2 RS-232 serial ports here. So the card went ISA 74 LS245 bus buffer unknown DIP40 plus DIP28 2 RS232s. I said to my chaperones, we're not getting this worked out today, I'm going to have to take it with me. I did some tracing back in the build lab. We definitely had 2 RS232s going to one port, but what was this DIP40? I tried my best to reverse engineer its pin out. I also posted on a forum what has 40 pins and 2 serial ports, to which someone responds to with MC68681 dual UART, without a doubt. This broke it, an MC68681 dual UART with a PNP EPROM. However, a simple MC68681 would never be able to be a real EISA PNP device, so this is where the vendor faked it, which had the result of the OS not recognizing it, so the other part of the EPROM, which I dumped, simply acted as fake jumpers to configure the IRQ, locked on IRQ 11 and 12, and COM port 6 and 7 assignments. The proprietary software for it checked for the weird PNP device, which was installed with a shim driver, a null device by just looking for the file. It then assumed COM6 and COM7. I mapped the pinout, which really was just 2 serial ports in one connector, configured a Windows 7 machine with 2 USB serial adapters to use COM6 and COM7, installed the software in DOSBox with real port, had an adapter made up for the physical connection, bought a USB to dual PS/2 from Amazon, and sent down a laptop with all that on to test if this works. They were overjoyed. Not only did the laptop work and pass all margin tests, but it had all been commoditized. The fabrication machine went back into work, eating data files still produced by modern software, and producing steel in the right shape with the right holes. As far as I know, they're still using it today. Who made this system? This story is not mine but a friend's that is too lazy to write it. Friend as friend, user as user. Friend is asked in his job to manage tickets from a social media made for that enterprise. A ticket arrives saying user cannot get into his recently created account. So friend searches into the system for the error and something appears. There was an unexpected error, type equals internal server error. /user_/user_he/him.vcf, no such file or directory. Server works on Linux. To clarify, user wrote his username as username user surname he/him. He was working at home, so when friend started to hit his desk with his forehead, his family were there to assist him. Dear user, please change your username so it does not contain any special characters such as slash, dollar, etc. Ticket closed. Dear system administrators, please change the way the system stores user data, saving the .vcf file with a user ID instead of the user profile name. Ticket sent. Let me tell you, this user is not the last one to have this type of issue. Hardware swap. So I'm doing a hardware swap this morning. Nothing out of the ordinary, swapping a user from desktop to laptop since most of my users are remote/hybrid and it's easier to travel with a laptop. I prefer for users to bring their old equipment in if possible, especially if they are a regular caller. So user arrives and has the old equipment in a Walmart bag, no big deal, makes it easier to carry, I guess. I walk the user through how to set up and connect to the docking station, so they can use external monitors. She asks how mouse and keyboard will work, so I point out the USB slots for her. She seems to understand and thanks me for the new setup. After she leaves, I start taking things out of the bag and separating for end of lease return or recycling. There's a keyboard with all of the letters rubbed off, the PC and power supply, and lastly the mouse. But this mouse was special. Why was it special, you ask? Because it was wet, and now so was my hand. I don't know what was on it or how it got wet, but needless that put a damper on my day. With users like this, I'll be staying at this company for a long time. User called in last week about an issue with Outlook, so per usual I offered to remote in to see if there were errors, maybe enable logging to see what's up. When I connected, I noticed her connection was very slow. We did a speed test, she was getting 4 megabits per second down. Shudder. I suggested she swap her computer to 5 GHz bandwidth, and let her other devices stay on the 2.4 band. She messages me today. Day to you. Just wanted to say thank you for saying something about my connection speed last week. Made some tweaks to our Linksys Wi-Fi extenders, and this is what my work laptop looks like today. 128 megabits per second down, 6 megabits per second up. And for all this time I thought that 5 mpb speed was just the way it was. Woof. People like this is one of the big things that separates this employer from places I've been before. People here show appreciation for support staff. I wonder what this button does. A bit of background: I started out in computer operations before IT even existed, working for a big financial institution in the northern UK. So back in the early days, the mainframes were up on the third floor with the printers, while the tape units and disk drives were kept on the second floor, separated by a glass wall with a glass door in it. Each location had terminals with system messages appropriate to its function, but we kept in touch via the intercom. One day, the big boss came down from on high with his big boss buddies, showing them around the shop. He waved vaguely at us lowly tape operators and said something to his mates, and they all laughed. We couldn't hear them above the noise from all the tape drives and the disk drives through the wall. Then he led them through the door to the disk room. Moments later, we found we could all hear perfectly, as the tape drives died. As the door opened, we also heard the disk drives powering themselves down. Big Boss appeared, face as white as a sheet. He wasn't laughing now. Just then, the intercom burst into life. "Is everything okay down there?" The mainframes seemed to have frozen up. That was the first and the last time I ever saw a guided tour of our facility.